I'm Jimmy DeMetro, president of the Hellenic Film Society USA. I'm in New York, as is a member of our board of directors, Stavroula Toska, who is an award-winning filmmaker. And she told me to mention that she is a fantastic Greek woman. I could see her smiling about that. And we both have the pleasure of speaking with distinguished Greek film director Vassilis Loules, who is in Athens. Yasu Vassili. Well, Vassili, I'm happy to have this opportunity to speak with you and have our viewers on our YouTube channel, the YouTube channel, the Hellenic Film Society, get to know you a little better. You and I met in, I think it was 2015, when you came to New York to
it was 2013.
Was it 2013? Oh, time flies when you're having fun. 2013, when you came to New York to promote your documentary film, Kisses to the Children. And I must say that ever since then, we've become friends, and it's a friendship that I value and treasure. And so I'm very pleased to have you with us today. I know you studied to be an engineer, and that I don't think you ever worked as an engineer. You became a filmmaker. Tell me about that. How did that happen? Is this the typical situation of a Greek mother saying, you'll get your diploma and then you can do whatever you want to do? How did this interest in film, where did that come from? After your engineering studies, or was it always in the back of your mind?
Yeah, actually, I had no idea that I was gonna be a film director. Actually, I studied my film studies while I was studying electrical engineering in Athens.
But still, what drew you to that? How did that happen?
You know, it happens. Just happened. Of course, I had no ideas for filmmaking or to make a movie or just like things like that. But while I was studying electrical engineering in Athens, I started watching films in cinemas, take part in discussions about film. So I decided to try it. I just began I enrolled in a school film just to see what it's about, what is it. So the second year of my studies in the school film, one of my teachers invited me to work with him to a film he was going to do. It was Dimos Theos, one of the big directors of the 60s. So I followed him, and after that, but you know, for some years I was studying electrical engineering as well as filmmaking, and I did work as a film as an engineer for about 10 years. Yes, I was.
Oh, I did. Oh, I had no idea. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Because, you know, for many years, I thought that electrical engineering was a way to earn money for a living. It was a solid state
Right.
to live. And filmmaking was the way to express myself, let's
Right.
say.
I see.
You know, it's funny, but that I'm always making a joke about this situation that the strength of materials class we had in National Technical University in Athens was very valuable for me because I through the engineer's complicated and analytical job about with its organized way of thinking and the constructions structure. These were very valuable equipment for my job as film director.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. A sense of structure and
you know, strength of materials. Strength of materials class had a double effect. First, it helped me to create brand new solid words, starting from the beginning, because filmmaking is exactly this: create a new world.
Well,
and from the other hand, it offered me the psychological strength to manage this construction of the new world.
Well, engineering's loss is the cinema's gain, because I think of you as one of the most compelling Greek filmmakers working today. Somehow, with each new film, you seem to be able to reinvent yourself and turn out work that is consistently interesting and viewable. And I, as a viewer, certainly look forward to anything you do, because I've learned to expect some very high quality work from you. I see that behind you, you have a collection of posters from your narrative film work. I, of course, think of you predominantly as a documentary filmmaker. But tell us a little bit about that. I know you've done a few short narrative features, not a feature film yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, all right.
And I know that you're planning a feature film. Talk to us about this change. Are you equally comfortable in the two genres? Does it require a very different kind of eye, a very different kind of discipline, going from a documentary to a feature film or a narrative film? Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think that I started my film career as a typical new director. Everyone who starts his or her career wants to construct a new cosmos, a new world. And fiction films are very popular to this, are very fitting to this idea. So I started this way, making fiction films, short fiction films, narrative films. But after 10 years of making films, I almost I started making films based on personal testimonials, because I loved people talking about their personal stories. Right. From my childhood. It's a story coming from my childhood. when I was a child in my father's bicycle shop, listening to the stories of his customers and his friends, stories about politics, about the history, about fairy tales. It was the way I was raised.
Right.
So when I was about 30 years old, I was asked to make a documentary film for Greek on the story of Lella Karagiannis, legendary.
Who was the heroine of the Greek resistance during the German occupation?
Yeah, it was the first time I was fascinated by this way of making films, because I had her son Yorgos in front of me, in front of my camera.
Yorgos was the son of
the son, the son of Lella Karagianni, and it was a very very fascinating.
Well, of course, when you speak about your interest in hearing testimonials from people, this, of course, brings us to what I consider your masterpiece, Kisses to the Children. It's an enthralling documentary in which 5 Greek Jews talk about how they were saved by Greek Christian families during the war. And I guess what drew me to the film, aside from the very interesting subject matter, was the eloquence of the testimonials and of the testimonies, excuse me, and certainly the dignity and intelligence with which you approach the subject. And it really is a landmark film, not only in Greek cinema, but I think in the Holocaust genre as well.
Thank you for your comment.
Well, that is true. I mean, why don't you tell our viewers? I know you've traveled all over the world with this film, and you're still traveling. The film is now, what, 6-7 years old, and people still want to see it. They invite you all over the world. You've been in I don't know how many countries, including several tours of the United States with the film. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? How it resonates with audiences? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, it was a great experience, this film and the tours with this film. First of all, this film, the creation of this film lasted 7 years, from the first idea, from the first thought about making a film, until the first public screening.
That long?
7 years, you know, it was a very hard work to do, because even though it was only 5 individuals talking about their experience when they were children, hidden children who hid in order to save their lives.
Exactly.
From the Germans, from the Nazis. Even though it was there were only 5 persons, the way we conducted the conversations, the testimonies, was that they had to talk about only what they remember from their childhood, not about what they learned later.
Right.
So it was like a psychoanalysis.
Yeah, you're
they Yeah.
You're asking them to relive their childhood, exactly.
Yeah.
That really.
So it was a very painful and difficult process to their childhood that was hidden into their bodies.
I think I told you that the title is so beautiful to me, Kisses to the Children. And yet I was reluctant to see the film because I just had to prepare myself for what I expected to be a grueling experience. And yet, ultimately, the film is life-affirming, and it's a very positive film. And you come away with such affection and such an understanding of what these Jewish children went through. It's just a wonderful, wonderful piece of work. You should be very, very proud of that. And I think the fact that it continues to be in demand, that you continue to travel all over the world to present the film and talk with audiences about it, is a testament to its power and its quality. I think we at the Hellenic Film Society, we have to bring that film back and get you here and to meet the audiences again. It's been a long time since we've.
I hope so.
Since we've shown it in New York.
Vassili, to interrupt you, Jimmy. I was wondering, since I've seen the film myself and it was quite moving, and I would love to see it again, and for the society to bring it here in New York. What has the response been in general, traveling with this film from one country to another or from one US state to another? And was any of it surprising to you? Or were people surprised to hear about the Jews in Greece at the time of the war? Because I feel like it's such a little known part of our Greek history and our relationship with the Jewish community in general.
You know, it's so, it's really touching to realize that so many people with different culture, when they watched this film, reacted in the same positive way. People from Greece, Vienna, Munich, Berlin, Sydney, Melbourne in Australia, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, Montreal, Oklahoma, Vancouver, Toronto, New Mexico, Michigan, Indiana, Connecticut, etc., etc. Shared the same feelings, and they smiled at the same scenes. And after the film, after the screenings, people used to approach me and to share with me their personal experiences or to congratulate me, etc. And they were very moved, and they moved and happy at the same time. Because, you know, this film has this paradox, let's say, that although it's about a very sad and gloomy period, the Nazi occupation in Greece, finally it's a very positive and optimistic film. Because from the other side, there is there are the stories of the brave Christian Greek saviors, the people who risk their lives to save these children, these Jewish children.
Well, the film captures the essence of humanity, and I think that's what viewers respond to. Everyone sees a part of himself or herself in what you've captured. It's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Let's move on to your next big film, which was again. I see the element of the testimonial, but it's a total change. And I'm talking about a film with a very long title, and I also passed by there and had paper shoes to wear. And this is a fascinating film in that well, but Vassili, you tell us about it. It was filmed in the area of Trikala, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, because
which is your country, your birthplace, and you captured elderly people telling fairy tales, the stories that they grew up with. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
You know, it's a film where grandmothers and grandfathers, folk storytellers, face the camera and tell fairy tales and stories. You know, this film is dedicated, let's say, to the people, to the last people of the land.
Yeah. You think? Well, it's almost a Homeric tradition, this oral tradition of storytelling. Do you really think it's going to disappear? Is that a fear of yours?
Yes. This way of storytelling is vanishing.
Yeah. Well, that must have been the motivation then for you to film it, to at least preserve it in some way for generations to come.
Actually, I was not trying to capture the fairy tales, because okay, they are already known, they are already collected in books or other ways. I only wanted to capture the storytellers,
right,
the people who tell the stories.
And you do that
because you know all of them are simple folk, shepherds, housewives, farmers, people with strong ties to the earth and to the animal world.
And yet, you know, each one
illiterate or unschooled, most of them, but endowed with the gift of storytelling.
Yeah, each one of those people in the film is a formidable presence, and that adds to the level of interest, of course. And that brings me to to this interest you have in the Greek countryside. We have an example of that, two very short little films on our YouTube channel called Two Sketches, and it's just a charming little vignettes about country life, children with animals, and then that whole tableau of the grandmother in the 1950s making yogurt in her primitive kitchen. People can see that on our channel. What is it? Do you recognize your own youth in at those moments, or how did this interest come about?
I recognize there in these films. I recognize my lost, let's say, not my lost childhood, but it's almost a lost universe. You know, it's almost a lost universe. In these films, in these, in the nature, in the countryside, you can still see how the life was for hundreds of years.
It kind of freezes
because you know our lives have changed during the last 50 years.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm a city boy, and yet I find such beauty in watching children with goats, little children relating to goats, and goats relating to children. There's something so beautiful about it, and you capture it with breathtaking cinematography, and just the right editing and the right music. And
I love in these films. I love very much the pictures of the animals, the plants, the dense forest, and the vast plains, the footpaths, the crossroads, the wells and the springs.
Yeah, the quality of your vision is quite evident. You know what you're looking for. You know what you're responding to, and you help the viewer respond in the same way. It's like seeing familiar things in an entirely new way, recognizing the degree of beauty that you just took for granted, perhaps, or never realized was there. Quite interesting, I think. Quite interesting. You are planning a feature film. Do you want to talk about that? I know a lot of directors don't like to do that. They don't want to talk about their next project until it's pretty much there, done. Do you want? I know you're going back to the fiction genre, or you'd like to go back if indeed the film is made, and I hope it will be made. Do you want to talk at all about that, or would you rather we wait to see the film?
No, I would like to give you a hint.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's a film based on a real story. It's a film, a feature film. It's gonna be a feature film that started from a documentary film, because my first ambition was to make a documentary film based on a real story which took place during the German occupation of Greece.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's a project that combines both your eye for documentary work and your eye for feature work. Okay.
Yeah, it started as a documentary film. It was exactly how, but after my first plans, I realized that it was impossible to have all this atmosphere of the time.
Of the period, you mean?
Yeah, or anything else. So I decided to go on with a feature film, which has to recreate.
I assume you've written the screenplay as well. You'll be working from your own screenplay. Is that correct? You're writing the screenplay?
Yeah. But it's a story of a man who managed to combine. This is very interesting. He managed to combine his scientific, let's say, scientific
knowledge.
Knowledge, yeah. So knowledge with the humanity. With the humanity.
Stavroula, doesn't that sound like an engineer becoming an artist?
He was an engineer. Yeah, he was an engineer. Yeah.
So now we know what kind of drew you to this project. Okay, I see.
But Vassili, has it become any easier? You've been making films since the 90s. Has it become any easier to make films in Greece now that there's, I think, in my experience, a little bit more of support, a couple of production companies that are willing to get behind Greek filmmakers and help bring the stories to the world? Do you find that things have changed in the last few years for the better, or is it still, because of the economy and whatnot, just as challenging?
Economy is economy. But the landscape has changed. There are also, it's true that there are some new companies, production companies, very helpful and very active and orientated in co-productions with European Union or other countries, or even in the United States. From the one hand, there are facilities which were not before 20 years. And from the other hand, there are too many directors now. You know, yeah, it's a boom of yeah, new directors, old directors. Everyone tries to find his or her place into this universe. But the problem is that always the money for cinema, for filmmaking in Greece is less. Is very few.
Actually, Vassilis, as you know, for an independent filmmaker, no matter what country you're in, raising the money and getting your film out there is a very, very difficult process.
Yeah,
it is more difficult in Greece, obviously, because of the what's available, and as you said, the number of people vying to get a piece of that pie. One of the things that fascinates me about you, and I wish you would talk to us a little bit about that. I know that a good part of your life these days is you teach filmmaking workshops in various, actually, you've even done this outside of Greece, from what I understand. Can you talk to us a little bit about why you feel this compulsion to teach filmmaking to, I imagine, not necessarily younger people, but I imagine most of the students are young. As a matter of fact, we have an example on our YouTube channel of one of those workshop films. It happens to be a wonderful thing. The group gets together and under your guidance, they present a film. They create a film. I think it's called On, Off, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful little short. If our listeners haven't seen it, I recommend it. Talk to us a little bit about those workshops. Why and in what ways do you find that rewarding? And why is it important for you to do that?
You know, it's funny that the workshops started after the end of Kisses to the Children completion. Because after 5 years of making this film, I had inside my soul so many feelings and knowledge and
lessons learned from
to share with people. So I decided to make film workshops to share my experience.
Your filmmaking experiences.
Yeah. But after 1, 2, 3 or more years, I realized that giving workshops was a good way to travel, to make journeys everywhere in Greece or even in foreign countries, yeah, and to meet people. And from the other hand, I thought I had the idea that you know, there are so many stories that I like to make film about them. But actually, I'm going to make very few of them. By making workshops, I feel that I make films that I never would be able to actually create.
I understand. Well, in closing, I'd like to go back a little bit to your comments on the financing, the current financing situation in Greece. One of the things I admire about you is that you are very knowledgeable about the contemporary Greek film scene. You seem to know just about everybody in the industry. Whenever I'll let the world know, I always depend on you to let me know about movies. And every time I ask you something, you know what I'm talking about. You've seen the movie I want to see. You know the director. So I think you have a really intense knowledge of Greek filmmaking today. And I don't see that in all of the directors that I communicate with. What is the future of Greek cinema? Is it a positive one? Is it one that we should look forward to? What are the overwhelming? I know, in my opinion, what the overwhelming problem is. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Can you talk a little bit about that? What is the greatest difficulty other than financing? What is the greatest difficulty for a Greek filmmaker today, in your opinion? Financing is enough of a hurdle. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, yes.
Where to start, right, Vassilis? Well, okay.
The problem in Greek cinema is they used to say that screenplays are the problem in Greek cinema.
Mm-hmm.
The good scenarios are the problem of the Greek cinema. I'm not sure that it's true. I think that the biggest problem was the lack of production of producers, smart and inspired producers, creative producers.
Right.
This is what Greek cinema needs.
Well, now, but you indicated earlier you think that's changing, though, right? You said
yes,
something.
Yes.
So that is.
Fortunately, yes, it's in a good way. Yeah.
The way I see things, one of the issues I was driving at is the lack of an audience in Greece. Very often Greeks do not go to Greek films. They prefer to see films in other languages. I can't tell you how many times we show Greek films in New York and people come up to me and say, I'm from Greece. I never heard of this film. It's wonderful. And they love the films when they see them, but they don't go to see them when they're playing in their own country. So that always surprises me. This has happened to me so many times. People introducing themselves as being from Greece, visiting New York or visiting another city we happen to be in, and being surprised at the quality of the film they just saw. So that's a struggle. That's a struggle. Yeah. Well, Vassilis, listen, I thank you for giving us this time. I think the world of you, and I'm so happy that you gave us this opportunity to speak with you and to hear your views. I know that I'm speaking for my beloved Stavroula, who is a most cherished and valued colleague. When I say thank you, and please know that we respect your work, we admire what you do, and we wish you many, many years of being able to keep doing it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I think we should continue the conversation when you're done with your next project, because
that would be wonderful.
Like Jimmy was saying before, and what you're doing with the workshops, passing on the knowledge, which is unfortunately what most people are not willing to do. We have a lot of acting coaches and we have a lot of screenwriters, but directors hosting these workshops and passing on their knowledge and experiences of decades is truly priceless for the next generation, and it's of extreme importance, Vassilis.
Thank you very much.
Vassilis, you're very special, and we're glad that you're part of the Greek cinema scene and such a worthy part of that. Take care. Thank you very much for speaking.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vassilis.
Bye-bye.
And last but not least, we're going to remind our audience for the Hellenic Film Expo on Demand, which is taking place July 10th to the 20th, 2020. Right, Jimmy? You decided.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You thought it was a great idea, and the rest of us just said, yes, let's do it, Jimmy.
Yes, it's fantastic.
And I promise we're going to bring back Kisses to the Children. It's time.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic, time, even though Kisses, it's fantastic.
It's time the world saw it again, at least the world in the US. Take care,
in any way we can support your work, Vassili. We're here.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.